This episode of The Bill and Callie Show is brought to you by Brown Insurance Group has been providing coverage to municipalities, companies, and individuals in the region for over 73 years. As a partner of the Keystone Insurers Group, we are able to offer an extensive line of insurance products and services, from commercial services including employee benefits and liability insurance, to personal services such as home, auto, watercraft, and motorcycle coverage. We are also committed to our community. We support many charities and events in the region. Our core values of care and integrity since the inception of Brown Insurance Group has made us one of Indiana's most respected and valued insurance agencies. To make an appointment with one of our experienced specialists, call our Highland Insurance office at 219-972-6060. Brown Insurance Group. Small town values, big time resources. Going beyond expectations to protect you and yours. On the 11th of November, at the Applebee's restaurant in Valparaiso, Indiana, Bill and I had the honor and privilege to not only dine amongst, but to also sit and talk with some of the men and women who have served and continue to serve our great nation. Many shared their stories of service with us, and a few chose to allow us to record their stories to share with you, our listeners. Here are their stories in their own words.
Hi, my name's John Moore. I grew up in central Indiana, Greenwood area. Joined the service back in 1976, the end of the Vietnam era. Had a 6-year commitment to 82. Did a lot of things, had some chances that I didn't do well on, but we all make mistakes throughout our life. Graduated or left the service acting as a sergeant, actually doing an E6 job with E5 stripes. It was the end of the Carter administration. And then I went back into civilian life and went into mortgage banking for most of my career. And then since then, what I've done is I started trying to help other vets, people that weren't quite as fortunate as I was. I started the chapter of USA Cares here in Indiana about 6 years ago. Now I'm working with Celebrate Recovery. There's a lot of things that vets out there need help with, and I'm here just trying to help spread some of that help.
Yeah, my name is Charlie Hicks. I live in Valparaiso, Indiana now, and been in the area all my life. Was born in Hammond and lived in the East area in Portage, so been around this area. Graduated Portage High School in 1967 and got drafted in 1969. Went in the Army, Fort Polk, and then I spent 14 months in Cam Bay, South Vietnam. I was with the 35th Engineer Group, 18th Engineer Brigade. I was in group headquarters. I drove a Jeep for a lieutenant colonel, and for a major. Don't want to give him a promotion. And that's what I did for 14 months there. Come out of there, got married, had a couple kids. Ended up going back in the National Guard. After a year of that, I went active duty with the National Guard. Got the rank of E6 there. Got out of the National Guard and after the divorce. And then a few years later, my wife told me to call this recruiter. I ended up back in the Army Reserve. Did 10 years in the Army Reserve with a chemical decon company in Illinois. And didn't have enough years to retire, but ended up getting out of that back in 1999. And worked in the auto body business all those years. Retired in 2012 from that. And since 2012, I've worked part-time at a local AutoZone and still doing that. Got my lady friend, we're together, been together now for 7 years, so that's good. All the kids are grown, and their kids are getting grown, and so it's all working out well. I enjoyed all my time in the military. Since that time, too, I've been I'm a life member of the VFW. I'm a member of the American Legion. I'm an associate member of the Marine Corps League. I'm a life member of Vietnam Veterans Incorporated, life member of Vietnam Veterans of America, of which I've been the Porter County president for the last 6 years, and also the secretary for the State Council. So I've still spread it around a little bit. Enjoy every minute of it. So, and in my spare time, I build model cars, keep me out of trouble. So, other than that, that's pretty much it.
My name is Lynn Steimel. I'm originally from St. Louis, and in 1968, I went in the service. That's back when they still had the draft. They had the draft, and I went in, spent almost 4 years in the Army as a radar operator, and I was stationed here in Porter, Indiana. I spent 37 months there, and I obtained the rank of the E5, Specialist 5th Class, and when I got out of the service, I decided to stay here. I had been here so long, I decided I might as well stay here. After the service, I drove a semi for a couple years, and I had an opportunity to get on the Valparaiso Fire Department. I joined the fire department in '79 and retired from the fire department in 2002. During that time, I spent about 9 years as a reserve police officer. I enjoyed that so much that I got on the police department after I retired from the fire department. And I spent 7 years full-time as a police officer, and the last 10 years I've been just on a part-time list. I decided to retire, then I got bored, now I'm driving a semi again. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Hi, my name's Mike Paskett. I served in the U.S. Navy, joined in '92, pretty much right out of high school. And I decided to go into electronics. It was called ICMAN, Interior Communications Electrician. And I served my 6 years in there. I decided to get out and leave the service after that, after serving a tour in Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and just studied pretty much alarm systems, intercom systems, alarm, sound-powered phones, any kind of like interior communications equipment. And when I got out of the Navy, I really couldn't find a job in the beginning, so I got a job at Cinnabon. And after that, I had the Illinois Scholarship Grant, and I decided to go to school. And the Illinois Scholarship Grant is I lived in the city of Chicago, state of Illinois, and they decided to help Illinois people who joined the military and Illinois veterans go to school and pay for their tuition. And then the GI Bill you can use for books and everything. So I decided to go further my study in electricity and even study the field of nursing, registered nursing. And I got a job in different electrical companies, and now I work at ArcelorMittal Steel as an electrician.
I'm Glenn Johnson. I was born in Michigan City, Indiana in 1959. I was raised down by the Kankakee River near Knox. And I went into the Air Force in 1980. I'd had a little prior experience with radio, and in basic training I was screened to become a radio and television broadcaster. So I went from basic training I went to the Defense Information School at Fort Benjamin Harrison in Indianapolis, and I was trained to become a radio and television broadcaster. My first assignment was the Far East Network, Tokyo, Japan. If you've ever seen the movie Good Morning Vietnam, that's pretty much what I did. I started out as a news announcer. I had an 8-hour shift. I had to do a 5-minute newscast every hour on the hour. I was in this great big brand new beautiful state-of-the-art building at Yokota Air Base, Japan, being a newscaster. I had to rip and read my copy off of teletypes, compile my newscast from audio feeds from the networks, and then I did all the announcing myself. And then eventually I had my own radio show. The first one I did was a show called East of Midnight, which was an album-oriented rock show that I got a lot of calls and requests for in the middle of the night from guys working on the flight line. They wanted to hear some of their favorite rock and roll. I got into radio production quite a bit. The mission of the Armed Forces Radio and Television Service, at that time it was called American Forces Radio and Television, and Ronald Reagan was inaugurated, and shortly thereafter they changed it to kind of give it a little more impact from American Forces to Armed Forces. Now I believe it's now called AFN, the Armed Forces Network. But the mission was to provide entertainment and information to the troops. We didn't do any commercial announcing. We did do public service announcing that sounded a lot like commercials. As part of the mission, we were trying to make it sound as normal as a radio broadcast as possible. And I went from being a farm boy in Indiana to working as a news announcer and DJ on a 50,000 watt flamethrower, as they say. I was there on duty by myself in the middle of the night when President Reagan was shot. I called my chain of command, and it was like a beehive after that. Everybody got on that story, and it was pretty intense there for a little while. I was there when John Lennon was shot. I was also there when the hostages were released from Tehran, which happened in conjunction with President Reagan's inauguration, taking over for President Carter. It was almost instantaneously happening at the same time. Those are some of the events I recall. I had a chance to come back stateside after my tour, 2.5 years. Or they said, you can go stateside and do 6 months, or you can go to another location for a year. And I thought, why not? It's a plane ride on Uncle Sam. So I was assigned to Sandreström, Greenland for my last year. So I went from a 50,000 watt station to a 50 watt station. But anyway, I got out of the Air Force. I did a little bit of radio work in Pueblo, Colorado, where my parents lived. Ended up coming back here and got a job on the railroad. I had already been on the railroad before I went in the Air Force, but everybody was furloughed, laid off. So things were in a little better shape in 1984. It was actually 1986 when I finally got going with the railroad again. I was with Amtrak, and I worked there for 32 years and retired last February, this past February. And I want to mention, before I mention what I'm doing now, my grandfather was a World War I veteran, combat vet in Germany, known as Doughboys. My father was a Korean-era vet. He did not go overseas. He was stationed in Colorado, a place he loved till he passed. Lots of uncles that served in wars. Lots of people in our family served in Air Force, Marines, Army, Merchant Marines. And I have a special mention of Warrant Officer Andy Howes from Knox, Indiana. He was very close to our family. He went to Vietnam when I was about 9 years old. He was like a big brother to me. He was lost in action missing in action. It took about 20 years before they determined that they were able to identify his remains, and he was brought back to Knox, Indiana and interred here about 4 or 5 years ago. It's a special day to remember all of the men and women who have served, all of the support that they received, including guys like me who are just spinning records. Little story real quick. One night I was at the NCO club and there was a couple Marines that came in. Now our Air Force base was like a country club compared to Camp Fuji, where the tables were bolted down and all they got was Hamm's beer or pop in aluminum cans with plastic forks and knives. Where our NCO club, we had 5 different bars in there, 3 different places you could order food, a fine restaurant, a burger joint, and whatever the other one was. We had bands in there all the time. So these Marines were in there, they were muddy, they were dirty, and I thought, oh boy. They were sitting right next to me, and I said, I'd like to buy you fellas a drink. Okay. And then we got to talking, and they said they were on bivouac. I didn't know. They might have been AWOL for all I knew, just trying to get into some civilization. And they got around to asking me what I did. And I was a little bit afraid that they wanted to kick my butt. They bought drinks for me the rest of that night. That's the kind of men and women we have out there. Honorable. Anyway, now that I'm 60, I'm a little more teary than I used to be. I'm widowed. I lost my wife this past year. But now I had a wonderful opportunity offered by one of my son's teachers. My son is a sophomore at IU. My daughter's a senior at Purdue. My son is studying videography and media arts. He went through the Porter County Career Center program with Bob Phelps. Bob put a shout out on Facebook looking for a volunteer, and I answered it last year, shortly after I lost my wife. It's been a lifesaver for me, helping those young teens out, learning how to be good broadcasters and journalists. I try to give them everything I know to make them better. I'm sorry I'm having trouble with my composure, but that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Hi, my name's John. John Jones. I'm from Munster, Indiana. Grew up in Munster. Went to high school, Munster High School, graduated Munster High School. I went into the Marine Corps in 1988. The only reason why I went into the Marine Corps, well, one reason is to serve our country. And my best friend went into the Marine Corps a year before I did, so I was left alone, basically. So joined the Marine Corps, went to boot camp in San Diego. After boot camp, went over to Camp Geiger in North Carolina and became infantry. I was infantry, went to Desert Storm. Before that, I was in the coup attempt in Manila in the Philippines. Desert Storm, Desert Shield, and then got back to the Med Float and went back to Iraq, and then went back to Afghanistan. So I got out after that. After the Marine Corps, I worked in the prison, Westville Prison, for about 3 years, where I met my wife. We have 3 beautiful kids. I've got 3 beautiful grandkids on top of that. Yeah. Was a police officer in Dyer for a little bit. Moved to Vegas. Was investigator for New York, MGM Grand, and did all the security investigations for them. Did that for about 9 years, where then I moved to California and became Will Smith's personal bodyguard. And did that for 2 years, and we moved back here for family. So now I'm back here. I work for Kleckner Interior Systems. I'm a carpenter, and do some good stuff with them. Just enjoying my time out here, yeah.
This episode of The Bill and Callie Show is brought to you by Brown Insurance Group has been providing coverage to municipalities, companies, and individuals in the region for over 73 years. As a partner of the Keystone Insurers Group, we are able to offer an extensive line of insurance products and services, from commercial services including employee benefits and liability insurance, to personal services such as home, auto, watercraft, and motorcycle coverage. We are also committed to our community. We support many charities and events in the region. Our core values of care and integrity since the inception of Brown Insurance Group has made us one of Indiana's most respected and valued insurance agencies. To make an appointment with one of our experienced specialists, call our Highland Insurance office at 219-972-6060. Brown Insurance Group. Small town values, big time resources, going beyond expectations to protect you and yours.